Good evening, everyone. We are sorry, it's 7 minutes past 8 and we are got a bit behind because our Facebook live stream didn't work quite so well. But anyway, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. We are finally here. I am Claire Turnbull. If you haven't come across my page before or any of my work, if you're new to this, and tonight I'm joined by the lovely Sarah Widdowson, who works alongside me at Mission Nutrition, and we're going to be talking all things women's health tonight. There is no question that is is okay not to ask. Is that right to say, Sarah?
Yeah, no taboos.
No taboos. There's lots of funny words and lots of interesting conversations that Sarah and I had going backwards and forwards about this kind of topic. So Sarah and I have worked together for about 4 years. So Sarah works as part of our team at Mission Nutrition. So just in case you don't know anything about that, Mission Nutrition is my team, and there are 18 dietitians and nutritionists that work throughout New Zealand. So we've got, it's like Sarah works in Christchurch. We've got a team of 3 in Christchurch, Wellington, Hamilton, Palmerston North, Auckland, Whangarei, all around the country in all different places. And we've got different dietitians and nutritionists that work in different specialities. So we've got some people that work in gut health and the emotional eating stuff and with kids. So we've got all sorts of different things, but Sarah specifically works in women's health, and that is the topic that we're going to be covering tonight. So I think it's time that I'll hand over to you, Sarah, to do a bit of an introduction, let everyone know a bit about yourself.
Awesome. And hi everybody who's saying hello. It's so cool to see people chiming in, which is exciting. So like Claire said, I'm Sarah, and I am one of Claire's fleet of dietitians that works across New Zealand. And my special area of interest is all things hormone health and women's health. So I actually started my journey as a dietitian 6 years ago, and I started working with children first of all, which I really enjoyed, but then I kind of landed a side gig working at a women's health clinic, and really feel lucky to have found my passion working with women. I think we're far more interesting than men, but don't tell anyone.
Tell everyone.
And we're complicated, and the way that we're living makes the work in terms of nutrition, I think, more interesting as well. So I now predominantly work in private practice for the wonderful Claire and for Mission Nutrition, and every day get to help women with their individual stories and their hormone health, which is very, very cool.
Oh, that's so good. And on it, like, it's just such a huge topic. And I think that just because of the nature of some of the conversations around hormones and periods and all the different things, you know, it's something that often doesn't get talked about because when things aren't going, you know, right, you're like, is it normal? Does anyone else have this problem? Maybe, particularly when, you know, I mean, I've had 2 kids, and what you think and accept as normal after you've had children, and then you realize, oh, hang on a minute, that is actually not normal. You know, you put up with so much because you're so used to things leaking and bleeding and all sorts of other things that you just go, oh, okay, we'll just put up with it. But actually it's not normal. No. So that's really good that we're going to be able to talk through some of those things tonight. Thank you to everybody that is saying hello to us. Just to let you know that anyone that writes a comment, even if it's just a hello, that you can go into win a copy of my diary or my journal, my planner. So it's a bit of an organizer to get your healthy habits on track, and a couple of healthy food guide cookbooks with some ideas and solutions to help you eat well. So anyone that writes in the comments can get one of those. Also, Sarah has very, very kindly written her 10 top tips that she will be going through tonight as a handout. So when Sarah's talking next, I'll put that up in the comments so that you can go and get yourself a copy of that. And the way that it's going to work tonight is basically I have got a list of questions that people have sent through to me about women's health and hormones and polycystic ovarian syndrome and all that stuff. So I'm going to ask Sarah all about those, and she is hopefully, well, you are going to give us some wonderful answers. And,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm going to fire away actually with my first question.
Alrighty.
Which is really, it's about the fact that I think hormones are talked about all the time. You see it advertised everywhere, magazines, supplements on the TV, hormonal health, right? But I often think that the understanding or the general understanding of how nutrition actually affects your hormones isn't really that well understood. So we often end up taking all these supplements or, doing all this. No one really knows what they're doing. So how does it work? How does what you eat affect your hormonal balance?
Yeah, big question. I think before I start my ramble answering that really important question, I think talking a little bit about what is a hormone is really important, because you're so right. There's so much conversation around that buzzword hormone, but I feel like a lot of people actually don't know what that means. I affectionately call hormones like the little messengers in your body. So they're basically molecules that are transported around your bloodstream, and they're produced by lots of different what we call endocrine glands, or glands that make hormones around your body. So you've got your thyroid hormone, which is made by your thyroid gland, obviously, and your pancreas makes hormones like insulin, which you and I are going to talk a lot about tonight, I am sure. But also your ovaries are endocrine glands that make hormones. And I think a lot of women don't know that your ovaries are very active in hormone production. They're not just passive sitting there chilling out. And hormones, basically, they change physical properties within our body, so turning on and off certain processes, but also they change things like behaviors and our mood as well. And I just think that's quite an important thing to know to start off with. In terms of how nutrition impacts our hormones, it's like I could write a book on the answer to that question. And I do hope that you and I can talk more specifically around nutrition and PCOS, for example, and fertility we'll get into. But I guess to briefly answer your question, hormones are made from fat. So we need fat intake to actually have hormone production. And also something that I see a lot of in clinic is women under eating, actually, which can implement or impact on the production of female sex hormones. So basically your brain is controlling ovulation, and ovulation is how females make hormones. And if you think about it in a really black and white sense, if you're not eating, your brain perceives there to be not enough nutrition out there. So a lot of the women that come to see me in clinic, they're, I guess, vulnerable to some of those fad dieting messages. They're engaging in really extreme, maybe like ketogenic diets or different types of fasting or really low calorie diets. And actually their hormonal health is being impacted by that because they're underfueling themselves. And if you underfuel yourself, you're impacting on your ovulation. So that would be one of the first things that I would like to bring up. Another big client group that I see in my work is women who are insulin resistant. So basically, they have trouble metabolizing glucose from carbohydrate foods, and those high glucose levels and those high insulin levels can cause things like an imbalance between estrogen and testosterone, which plays out in lots of different ways. So food impacts your hormones in lots of different ways, and we can get into the specifics further on our chat. I think there's a PCOS question in there. That would be, I guess, the first thing that I would want to bring up is that you need fat in your diet to make hormones is really important. Understanding that some people are more insulin resistant than others, and that can play into hormonal health as a female as well. But also being aware that undernutrition, so not fueling your body properly, can impact on your hormonal health as well.
And I think, I think that's a huge thing, isn't it? Because in the work that we do, often to be healthy or like to be seen to be doing something to be healthy is often about some level of restriction. So it's like, oh, well, if I'm going to be healthy, I need to eliminate all these types of foods. So I'm going to go off grains, I'm going to go off dairy, or it's actually, no, hang on, I need to eliminate all these types of foods, or I need to be completely sugar-free or have only these types of fats or whatever. And, what we know is that there is no one way that works for, for everybody. But and that's I mean, that's a lot of what we want to talk about, is that actually nutrition is so individualized. There is no one size fits all, but these restrictive diets or going on that is just not the way, not the way forward. And that's really good to know that from a hormone perspective, that we actually permission
to eat. Permission, yes.
You have to eat. You so have to eat. So my next question was really, again, around that kind of hormonal conversation, is why do so many women appear to have issues with their hormonal balance? Is it the environment? Is it just that we're testing more? Is it because we are too busy and we all want to have a problem? Or is there actually something going on that actually, compared to 20 years ago, there are more issues than there used to be?
Yeah, I think we're probably better at talking about it, first of all. Like, I cannot imagine my grandmother talking about her female sex hormones and her period every month. So I think we're getting better at breaking down some of the stigma behind talking about it would be, I guess, the first thing. And I think women want more for themselves, and they know that they don't have to put up with feeling like rubbish. And they're more assertive around wanting to find an answer behind that question. Is something wrong with my hormones? Other, I guess, common causes around hormonal imbalances that I see is women transitioning off hormonal birth control and perhaps not understanding the implication of some of that hormonal birth control. I know I'm a dietitian, not a doctor, so I'm going to stay in my lane. But it is something that I talk about with the women that I see in clinic with Mission Nutrition, is talking to them about their hormonal birth control choices. For example, hormonal birth control pill shuts down ovulation. And if you don't ovulate, you don't make hormones like progesterone, which make females feel very good because it stimulates production of a neurotransmitter. That's just one example. Or like the depot injection increases insulin resistance in females. So it has an impact on things like our bone health, but also weight and acne and all these other different things as well. So I'd say hormonal birth control is definitely something. The other thing to be aware of is for females across our lifespan and our life stages, we have a varying degree in terms of the production of hormones across our cycle. And most females that I work with will remember their periods as a teenager being kind of like rat bags, being irregular and being maybe on the heavier side. And that's their memory of periods as a teenager. And unfortunately, the same thing happens to us as we get older as females and we head through perimenopause, as our periods become more irregular and heavier. And it's because at both sides of that lifetime for a female, we're having more what we call anovulatory cycles, so cycles where we don't ovulate as often. So in the work that I do with women, it's understanding where they might be in their lifetime of making estrogen and with ovulating and understanding that. And I think also the stress point, absolutely clear. I think women are living differently than we did, 50 to 100 years ago. And we are career women and we're running our house and we're wanting to be it and superwoman for everybody in our lives. And I think having an appreciation for the way that not only stress itself and the production of stress hormones, but how our behaviors change with food, sleep, and movement when we're stressed, that absolutely impacts on your hormones as well. So I think it's not an easy answer as to why more women having more hormonal imbalances. I think there's probably an increased awareness. I think we've got more understanding of hormonal birth control and what that does to our hormones, and we're living differently than we did many moons ago.
And it's the same in nutrition, isn't it? Well, and anyone that's trying to manage any aspect of their well-being, often people just focus on one thing, but it's, whatever it is, whether it's weight management, whether it's your immune system, it's all
layers,
food and this and that, and you can never just look one thing in isolation. So my first question relating to the specifics is around periods, which I've never said on. I've said quite a lot of things on live TV. I've not said periods yet, and I've not talked about problem periods. So, and I think you're going to say some crazy other words in there. But I mean, there's so many different problems, and that people have, and I've got my own, and everyone has their own little thing that they kind of deal with. I mean, there's the PMT side of things, which is really bad for some people, and I guess there's a lot of chat about don't eat chocolate or caffeine, but I mean, really, is there anything else we can do other than that? Then this was really interesting to me when you and I had a conversation about this a couple of weeks ago, was the fact that there can be some link between like nutrition and painful periods or heavy periods, and that is something that a lot of people do struggle with. So if people have got problems with their periods, I don't think they'd think, oh, what I eat can make a difference, but how can it make a difference?
I mean, the first thing is, if you're having problems with your period, I don't think going to a dietitian would necessarily be your first port of call, because it can be all manner of things. And, for example, if we're talking heavy and painful periods, I'd be wondering about things like endometriosis or adenomyosis or fibroids. And so pushing women to have that conversation with their GP or gynecologist, I think, is really important. And then obviously for those specific situations, there's different things that we can do therapeutically in clinic around nutrition to help women. But for women who've perhaps presented to their doctor, they know that their periods are painful and or heavy, but don't have one of those other, I guess, more sinister things on the table, then there's definitely some things we can do. In terms of what is a heavy period, it's more than 80 mils across your bleed days. So period. I talk about periods all day, Claire. So
right,
I'm
if you think 80 mils, so what is it? What is a super tampon? What do they hold?
So the equivalent would be, I think it's around 10 fully soaked tampons across your bleed days. That's a heavy period, which isn't a lot.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Crikey. Yeah. Taking notes for myself. Carry on.
And clotting is not normal. So that's something else I think is really important to throw out there as well. In terms of what is the definition of a painful period? Periods can be uncomfortable, and that's not necessarily something to be worried about, I guess. But if they're painful enough to basically stop you showing up in life, they're impacting on your quality of life, or you're having to take pain medication to do things that should be quite normal to do, like go to work or be able to walk the dog in the morning or whatever it might be, or to fall asleep at night. That would be an example of painful periods. And if we kind of start with what are some nutrition things for painful periods, what's causing period pain if it's nothing sinister like fibroids, etc. Some rat bags called prostaglandins, which are made by your uterus itself, and they're not hormones, but they're hormone-like. And what prostaglandins do is they increase inflammation in your body, but what they're actually doing is they're stimulating the smooth muscle, which is what your uterus is made out of, basically to contract. Some women make more prostaglandins than others. And for example, we know that women with endometriosis do so than women without, but also you can make more of them, just basically genetic bad luck, if I can say that. And prostaglandins, there's been some really interesting research where they've supplemented with omega-3 fatty acids, and that's been really helpful for females in terms of period pain. So I'd be looking at a supplement if you're not eating oily fish at least 3 to 4 times a week. And most of the clients that I see in clinic definitely aren't eating oily fish enough, I think.
No.
And there's lots of different, taste preference, access to those kind of foods.
It's just not a habit. And it's actually a habit that we need to, I've actually got into this habit of like every time I go, I buy salmon and I freeze it into little blocks.
Yeah, whatever.
And then everything's about creating a routine around it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So omega-3s for painful periods would be one thing. There's some, I guess, not so much research, but experience among clinicians working in this space that reducing dairy intake, so the A1 casein in dairy, has been shown among kind of clinical case studies to help with period pain for some females. And I say that with a lot of caution because I'm not a dietitian who likes to take away food groups, and I think your lived experience is important. So if you reduce dairy and you feel that your periods are less heavy and less painful, I think that's awesome. But I do think you kind of have to be tracking things to see if you're actually getting the reward from that dietary change. The other thing around heavy periods is actually iron, and Claire and I were talking a little bit about this before we jumped onto the live. So lots of women will know that we're more at risk of iron deficiency than men because iron is attached to your red blood cells, and obviously when you have a period each month, you're losing iron through actually having a period. But what a lot of females don't know is when you have a heavy period, you obviously have more iron loss, but having an iron deficiency can actually cause heavy periods because iron is a natural coagulant, so helps to slow down some of that bleeding. So I see a lot of females getting into this horrible little tailspin where they've got heavy periods, they then have low iron, which causes more heavy periods. So presenting to your GP for some blood work around iron is really important. In terms of preventing deficiency, if you do have a heavy period already, obviously working with a dietitian around iron-containing foods would also be really important as well. Yeah,
and I think that the other thing, and this is personal experience, but also professional experience, low iron post babies, and it's something it happened to me with both of my children, and because you just feel like rubbish anyway, I feel like total shit. I've not slept for however many months, whatever else. I didn't pick it up even myself because I didn't think about it because I was just like, it's obviously just this baby.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually,
you could say the same with, if we go back to the stress conversation, how many women are doing just the most insane, work days or have lots of responsibility in their days, and maybe we push things back on, I'm tired because of X, Y, and Z, but perhaps there's something else going on, like an iron deficiency. So it's
it's really easy to explain all that stuff away, isn't it? I totally get it.
Absolutely.
So with the, so just a couple of questions that did come up. Someone just wanted to clarify, is it 10 tampons over the course of a period over 7 days?
Yeah.
So it's not 7 days. So if your period went for longer than 7 days, it could be more?
So if your period goes for longer than 7 days, we would call that abnormal as well. So, I mean, if we can kind of talk about some periods, I'm just going to derail some other questions.
Yeah, you're normal. Yeah, I'm abnormal in all senses by your current definition. Yeah.
So, I mean, what we would see as normal is bleeding between 25 to 80 mils across your bleed days of your periods.
Yeah.
Of your period, right? So less than 25 mils, we would say that's a light period, and more than 80 mils, we would say is a heavy period. Your cycle length, which is if you count from the first day of your period to the next first day of your period, should fall somewhere between 21 to 35 days. So if it's coming before 21 days, it's too short. Yeah. If it's coming after 35 days, it's too long. And the average cycle length for females is 28 days, but only around 17% of females actually fit that 28-day number that I guess we perhaps are told about. So just knowing that there is, I guess, a difference there or individual variability among that is quite important. And I think a lot of that basic, I almost call it ABCs of your period, like knowing that about your body is really important. How often do
because then you know what to expect and what's not, whether to worry or not. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. The other thing, okay, so we'll go on to this question here, which is PCOS, very big. So, I mean, as far as I know, is it 1 in 10?
Yes.
1 in 10. And I have PCO. Apparently you can have the PCO, but not the syndrome. I don't know. That's what my gynecologist told me. But I have polycystic ovary.
I didn't know that.
No, but apparently he said that I don't have the syndrome because because I'm a trained dietitian and a fitness trainer, so I've actually managed to get myself out of that situation.
Yeah,
but I have massive amounts of cysts on my ovaries. There you go. The things that you share, but 1 in 10, so it's 1 in 10, which is very common.
Yeah.
Presumably there's obviously a range of symptoms, because you can have people that are, have virtually not affected at all, with people that have, huge problems. So what are the symptoms of PCOS, and how can you help with it?
Yeah, you're so right. There's such a spectrum of symptoms. I've had clients who have no idea that they have polycystic ovaries until they have trouble with fertility, or perhaps have been on hormonal birth control for such a long time that they haven't had that kind of measure of a period to actually see if there's some irregularity there. Some of the symptoms are hair growth in places that perhaps we wouldn't like there to be as females, so our navel or on our face. And our chest as well for some females, but also thinning of hair. Oh my God, it's 8 o'clock, guys. Hair on your head, thinning with PCOS. Acne is another one of them. Weight concerns, and when we kind of unpack that, it's basically females feeling that they find it harder to change their weight than other females in their same peer groups, or that they gain weight quite easily. But also that cycle irregularity or absence of cycles is something else you see with PCOS. So normally they're longer than 35 days, and somebody who perhaps doesn't have the same support around nutrition for their PCOS. So you see really, really long cycles. So they're getting their period a couple of times a year, or once every 3 or 4 months, instead of every single 21 to 35 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the work that I do with women with PCOS, the aim of the game is really to improve their sensitivity to insulin. So the issue with polycystic ovarian syndrome is you're not quite getting to ovulation. So across a cycle, what should happen is your ovaries should make estrogen, which help your follicles, which are the kind of sacs that contain your eggs on your ovaries, to ripen and to develop and mature. And when the most mature follicle reaches its maturity, or its biggest size, that gets to pop off in the act of ovulation. But with PCOS, ovaries are making testosterone as well as estrogen, and all females make testosterone, but they have this imbalance where they're making more testosterone than estrogen, which means that they don't quite get to ovulation. So they have these kind of, I call them grumpy ovaries. Yeah. Basically, you end up with ovaries that are have lots of almost mature follicles, so cystic, and you can cite that in an ultrasound. Obviously, I don't do that. A doctor does that. Yeah. And the aim of the game is we help to improve insulin sensitivity for females, because we know that the more insulin resistant a female is with polycystic ovarian syndrome, so the more insulin she makes after meals and after eating, the more testosterone production that will occur in her ovaries, because your ovaries have insulin receptors. So we talk a lot about not cutting carbohydrates. Women need carbohydrates to ovulate. That's a very important sentence I want women to hear. But we talk about carbohydrate awareness. So where are the sources of carbohydrates in your diet? How much are you having? What kind? Are they high in fiber? But also, what can we add to those meals? So I'm all about additions, not subtractions. So for example, if a client was having toast for breakfast, I would be asking her around, how many pieces of toast? Are we choosing a bread with lots of fiber? Because fiber slows down carb digestion. And if you have a slower trickle of glucose into your bloodstream, you have a slower trickle of insulin. Less insulin means less testosterone. So I hope that makes kind of sense. Domino cascade. And then it's around adding protein and healthy fats and lots of colorful vegetables. So no subtractions. We're just adding. So I would look at a client's diet history and help her to celebrate where are her colorful vegetables. When she's eating carbohydrate containing foods, is she pairing those foods with things like proteins and healthy fats? And the other thing we do with insulin sensitivity for women with PCOS is managing stress hormones, because the more stress hormones you make, the more insulin resistant you become. So I'm obviously not a psychologist, but we can talk about, stimuli like caffeine, for example, cause an increase in stress hormones. So talking through those types of things, but also just inviting a woman to think about what are her sources of stress in her life, and perhaps are some of the implications of that stress affecting her hormone balance. And the last thing that we would work on with polycystic ovarian syndrome is celebrating lean body mass and really encouraging any activity. So we know that your higher your muscle mass, the more insulin sensitive you are, which is a really positive thing. So sometimes it's connecting women with some ideas around exercise behaviors that they'd like to pick up. And weaving those throughout the day, not just at 30 minutes in the morning or 30 minutes at night. It's thinking about where can you have that movement across the day. I call it snacking on exercise affectionately. But those are some of the things that we would work on together for PCOS.
And I think, having worked in this job for a long time, I think the great thing is you can see really good results, can't you? Because it's just I think like the side effects of PCOS can be so just dreadful for people, dreadful.
They're awful. And a lot of women with PCOS, have horrible stories around going to the GP and basically being told you have to lose weight to manage your PCOS. And I really like to spend time with women talking to them about we need to improve your sensitivity to insulin, but we can do that irrespective of weight change. And a woman kind of hearing, I need to lose weight to get pregnant, that's a really heavy thing to hear. And then kind of engaging in some of those fad diets, which can lead to, increased cravings and that weight cycling. So it's a passion area of mine, PCOS. I think those women deserve lots of TLC.
Yeah, exactly. And also teenagers, I think this is, that it's, I think that's, if you're a parent and you've got a child, knowing that there is actually something that you can do to support them, because like you say, when you go to the GP, as wonderful as GPs can be, everyone's got different specialities. So some GPs, and I say this because I have doctors in my family. My dad's a doctor, my brother's a doctor. I come from a medical family. Doctors, like dietitians, have areas of expertise. So your GP or your doctor that you go to may be absolutely fantastic and really aware of nutrition stuff. Others, that might not be their thing. But that's why different kind of people work in different areas. So another area, which is, again, I think, I feel like it's 1 in 10 as well, but I may be wrong, is endometriosis. And I've got lots of friends with endometriosis. What is it, and how on earth can nutrition make any difference at all?
Yes. So endometriosis is quite different to PCOS in that it's not a hormonal condition, and we don't know nearly enough about endometriosis yet. There's lots of conversation around endometriosis being similar to an autoimmune disease, but basically what endometriosis is it's your endometrium is your uterus, so it's uterine tissue growing outside of your uterus. And we grade endometriosis depending on the depth of the tissue growth and the severity and where it's located within a woman's pelvic area. And you're so right, Claire, endometriosis also affects 1 in 10 women, and the average length of time to diagnosis from first presentation of symptom is 8 years. So it takes women a long time to get the answer.
And one thing that when I started Mission Nutrition, I was absolutely adamant about actually was the crossover between if you go to our website on Mission Nutrition, you'll see that we have this filter system to make sure that if you whatever symptoms that you have, that you book in with the right person, because it's really important that you get seen by that person. But one of the things that we always have picked up is that so many people who think they have got irritable bowel end up having endo, and it's something that we are always on. And anyone that's got those kind of gut issues,
absolutely,
it is. I think everyone kind of gets put into that bag, and I at Mission Nutrition, where anyone that works in gut health has got that big red flag of going, is this endo? Because as you said, like people don't. Gosh, 8 years to get
8 years, which is insane. And I think the point you're saying there, Claire, around we need to be mindful when we work with women around gut issues. That's kind of how dietitians can help with endometriosis. But also, I personally believe as a dietitian that when you're working with a female, it makes sense to ask her about her periods, just like we're trained to ask about bowel motions all the time.
Yeah.
I think we should ask about periods, because you're totally right. There are clues there. And the trouble is that if you don't talk about your periods with other people, how do you know that the pain that you're in isn't normal, or that how often you're having to change your sanitary items isn't normal either? So that's just, I get all ranty when I talk about periods, but I'll go back to my lane of the nutrition question.
It's good.
So in terms of how nutrition can help women with endometriosis, so 95% of women with endometriosis also experience irritable bowel syndrome, which is a collection of symptoms like diarrhea or constipation or flicking between the two. Endo belly, and it's not bloating like full after a meal. It's really significant, severe bloating and increasing gas as well. And some of them also experience things like reflux and irritable bladder as well, which is obviously really uncomfortable for them. And how dietitians can support you if you do experience IBS and endometriosis is working through something called the low FODMAP diet, which I don't really want to spend too much time talking about today because we'll be here for hours. But basically it's helping females to identify what are the foods that are fermenting in their large intestine, which causes that expansion and those different symptoms they may be experiencing, and then what can they tolerate in terms of doses of those high FODMAP foods. There's also good evidence to support low wheat diets for women with endometriosis, so not gluten-free necessarily, but pulling back on wheat-containing foods, especially it helps with the bloating symptoms. It's quite significant for females. And then we also know that, again, omega-3 supplementation can be really helpful for reducing inflammation and pain for women with endometriosis. And there's been interesting randomized control trials, which is basically they've got the population group with endometriosis that take omega-3 supplementation versus a population group with endo who don't take the omega-3 supplementation. And the ones who did take the supplementation took significantly less pain meds, which is really exciting, I think.
Great, isn't it? And it's a win in other ways, because obviously omega-3's got so many other benefits as well.
Absolutely. So in terms of how food helps endometriosis is basically it's all around helping them with their gut symptoms in particular, but also supporting a reduction in inflammation through different dietary changes as well.
Amazing. God, you're so good at this, I tell you. It's fascinating, because this is the stuff that literally doesn't get talked about. And in the same way, I'm an ambassador for the Bowel Cancer Society and for Bowel Cancer New Zealand, And one of the things that, I'm often talking about is people need to know what's normal and what's not normal. And we wouldn't, more people die, of bowel cancer than of prostate cancer and breast cancer combined, because we don't talk about it. And it's the same with this period stuff, is that people live miserable lives. And I think I'm so excited to be talking about this. So the next one is the menopause.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
The what age? How do you know? Is there anything you can do? Does the whole, should you have soy, not? I don't know. All those questions that come up with menopause.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that the midlife woman is underrepresented when we talk about hormonal health, and there's all this attention around, like teenagers in their periods and reproductive years. And then a lot of the women that sit in front of me feeling really frustrated with their experience going through menopause feel that there isn't the same conversation and support. So I hope there's lots of women going through perimenopause listening to this talk, because I'm so excited to share some information with you wonderful ladies. The word that I want to use is perimenopause, which is actually the period of time before menopause, which is 12 consecutive months without a period. And perimenopause is basically, in the nicest way possible, puberty 2.0. So what happens? It's so hard being female sometimes. So basically, all the time. So what happens is you have more anovulatory cycles, so you're not ovulating as frequently as you were in your peak of your reproductive years, just like when we were a teenager. And not having that consistent ovulation means that we basically are having a surging of estrogen. So your ovaries and your brain are communicating with each other. And basically, if you're not ovulating frequently, your brain's really giving those ovaries a nudge and going, come on, we need to get this done. We need to keep ovulating. And then what we end up on is an estrogen roller coaster. So instead of having a peak of estrogen the first half of our cycle and then a fall away and then another peak when we ovulate again, is we end up with this up and down, up and down, up and down. And it's that peak and trough of estrogen production, but a net loss of estrogen, if you look at collectively over a month, that causes problems for females going through perimenopause, like brain fog, like hot flushes, like weight change, not necessarily just on the scales, but also where it's sitting on their bodies, which they can feel really frustrated with as well. So the support that I do with women is helping them to navigate that estrogen roller coaster. And the other thing that's really hard is there's no blood test for perimenopause. So because of the estrogen going up, down, up, down, up, down, how do you blood test that? You've got no idea if you're on the top of the roller coaster or the bottom of the roller coaster. You can have a blood test for menopause, which is obviously when you've stopped having periods altogether for 12 months. But I think that's really frustrating for women, not knowing, am I actually going through perimenopause? What we can do nutritionally is there's lots of evidence to suggest that estrogen helps to improve your body's sensitivity to insulin. So there's that insulin word again. And so without the same estrogen production, what can happen is you become more insulin resistant, which is why we have that change in body shape and body weight when we're going through perimenopause. But it's also, if you think about insulin being the hormone that you need to access glucose from food, that lack of the key to unlock the cell door to get that glucose from your food means that we end up with that brain fog. So it's not that suddenly you've lost your thoughts and your memories. They just don't come to you as quickly because you don't have the insulin there because of that insulin resistance to access the glucose from food to do the thinking that you need to do, which is really frustrating. So again, it's around improving your insulin sensitivity and utilizing actually a lower carbohydrate diet, focusing on beautiful, healthy fats and lots of colorful vegetables. It's also important for females to know that through perimenopause, estrogen increases our metabolism. So if you have a net reduction in estrogen, our metabolism drops as well. So our basal metabolic rate, how much energy we do need. And so sometimes it's just sitting with women and having a conversation around that as well. And really encouraging, again, any exercise that you can do is really important during that time as well. If you are unfortunate enough to be navigating things like insomnia and hot flushes, looking at caffeine and alcohol are the easiest things. I don't say easy as in it's easy to break up with those beverages, trust me. But I mean like low-hanging fruit, things that we can work on and be experimental. Like if I don't have alcohol during the week, do I sleep better? And understanding the impact that that'll have on your mood, because again, mood is something else that women really struggle with when they're going through perimenopause, because we're not making progesterone, and progesterone makes females feel good. So perimenopause is a rough time, but if I was going to give any recommendations, it would be to understand the relationship between estrogen and insulin, to reduce carbohydrates with the guide of a specialist dietitian, to increase healthy fats, colorful vegetables, prioritize exercise, and not just only for your body, but for your mind and for that self-care, and to look at behaviors around things like alcohol and caffeine, which are going to increase your insomnia issues that can happen with perimenopause, but also things like the hot flushes and the night sweats, which are awful symptoms to be navigating.
Oh, so good. So good. I'm scribbling away. So the last topic that we kind of going to touch on was the and something that I know that you're massively passionate about as well and have lots of experience in, is the fertility conversation. And I, having been through this all myself, and actually that's how I found out I had my polycystic ovaries, because it took me years and years and years. That's where that came from. I'm on the low end of the scale. But that was one of the reasons why it took me many years to have little people. But, you know, it is a thing that's so you know, many people struggle with, and it's obviously that emotional head, you know, particularly if, you know. So I guess in your work, you know, why is it worse? Is it becoming more problematic? And, you know, what is the role of nutrition in fertility?
Yeah. I mean, I think that more and more, I don't think I know, we know that we're becoming, having more and more troubles with fertility. I think there's lots of different reasons for that. I also want to pay careful attention to the fact that it's not just female fertility that nutrition can have an impact on. So when you look around issues with fertility, a third is due to female fertility factors, a third is male fertility factors, and then a third is we actually don't know. So there's not a diagnosable cause for the fertility troubles that a couple might be going through. And I think that females are perhaps unfairly picked on when it comes to fertility. So I just want to say that it can be due to the guy as well.
Yeah.
In terms of the evidence behind nutrition and fertility, I do think there's a lot of hype out there that isn't evidence-based, and I think that couples or people going through fertility journeys are particularly vulnerable to that type of information, because nothing's more emotive than wanting to be a mama bear, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's something to be really cautious about, is you know, the investment in things like supplements and different herbal products and all the different promises that are out there on the internet. Where the evidence lies is a Mediterranean type diet. And I sound like a broken record now, but really it's going back to things like the omega-3s, looking at dietary sources of them, not just oily fish, but things like olive oil, avocado, nuts and seeds are wonderful as well. And the evidence behind the Mediterranean diet is basically around oxidative stress. So our cells in our body are constantly regenerating, which means that if there's any DNA damage going on, we're making new cells. So it doesn't matter so much.
Yeah.
Every single cell in your body, except for your ovaries. So your eggs themselves are the eggs that you had when you were in your mum's tummy. Essentially, right? So they are more vulnerable to that oxidative stress, which means DNA damage. So if we look at the quality of the eggs that we're producing, it's really important that we have a diet rich in antioxidants and omega-3s because of protecting against that oxidative stress, meaning that the eggs that you're using to make that baby are really high quality, basically. The other thing that's really important for fertility is actually vitamin D. And I think this is something from the research that I read and work with my clients, is I think vitamin D will be like the next folic acid from the Ministry of Health. I think that'll be something we see in the next couple of years. And if you look at research around vitamin D sufficiency among females, around 40% of us are deficient in vitamin D, so it's massive. And vitamin D has a role in fertility that we're only just beginning to understand, but we know that vitamin D has the potential to turn on certain genes, and there's vitamin D receptors within your ovaries and our female reproductive organs, so vitamin D is actually really important. And most of the people here tonight, I'm sure, know that the sunshine is where we should be getting the majority of our vitamin D, and look at Claire and I snuggled up in our houses.
Fully covered.
Fully covered. So absolutely, again, supplementation can be useful, but also getting yourself exposed to sunlight. And I don't mean getting out there and lobstering in the middle of the day, but being aware that being cooped up inside all day is not a way to get your vitamin D sufficiency up. So vitamin D and fertility is really important as well. And the other thing is, again, insulin. I sound like a broken record again, but we know that insulin resistance increases miscarriages, and it increases time to conception. So it makes it harder to fall pregnant. So looking at insulin sensitivity is really important as well. And through that, we're talking about things like watching sugar intake, watching saturated fat intake, not eliminating. There's nothing more stressful than when you're going through a fertility journey, being told you can't have that chocolate. That's not what I'm about. But it's just being cautious, I guess, around, how we're using those foods. The cruel irony with fertility is it's stressful, and stress increases infertility as well. So helping women to have other tools in their toolbox outside of just food to cope with stress is, I think, really important as well.
Yeah, and I think I was one of those people that I got really, really stressed about it over the years, and then I was on the fertility waiting list, and then I had my appointment and whatever, and then I found I probably had let go of the dream, and then I ended up, after how many years it was, falling pregnant about a week before my appointment, which is, I think...
I love these stories. I just think it's amazing.
I know, I'm just like, oh my God, it is amazing. But there are some amazing people out there in that world. But I mean, it's just, I think what is so brilliant about everything that you said is that this is not there's things that we can do, and they're actually they're not massively expensive. It's about doing the right thing, and that's a lot of nutrition in general. And that's why, Sarah and I and everyone at Mission Nutrition, we're so passionate about what we do, because there's this, I think the general restriction, follow these diets, follow these particular trends, get so much airtime. But actually, when you've done, I've been doing this for 20 years, and that actually that stuff just kind of drags people in and doesn't make people feel very good. But actually, when you look at the quality of what you do, and then you find good people that know their stuff on their topic, you can open yourself up to all the problems that you had can be managed by specific, the specifics. And it's actually, I mean, I talked about the TV the other day when I was talking about immunity. I was like, it's not one thing, it's actually going, what is it for you that's causing those issues? But
it's probably been quite apparent in our conversation that some of the tips that I've given can help with multiple different things. So I think the cool thing about nutrition is you give one suggestion, or you encourage a female to make one change, and it's a domino effect. It can help with lots of different aspects, not just targeting each individual nitty-gritty problem. It's a big picture thing as well.
Totally. So I'm just going to go through a couple of questions on the side that we've got here, which is, if I can flick, does it go up? There you go. Because I had this, on Instagram today, I had a couple of people asking this question. It's about migraines related to hormones. Is that a thing? Can you get, I mean, it's not a nutritional thing, but do you know whether that actually causes any difference? I don't know the answer to that.
Do they mean like around menopause, or is it?
Can you get hormonal headaches, menstrual migraines? Can hormonal imbalances cause headaches, I suppose, is probably the question.
I mean, some of the different birth control options some of the side effects there can cause migraines, absolutely. And then if you think about the change in estrogen across your cycle, so the first half of your cycle you're making more estrogen, meaning that you have more availability to use glucose from food and your brain uses glucose. And then the second part of your cycle you have less estrogen. So I would be perhaps tracking your cycle and seeing, are your headaches falling around that second half of your cycle, and is it to do with the estrogen drop perhaps?
And I think a lot of what you've taught me over the years is around it being aware, because the days go by and you can put all these things down and you're like going, is it that, am I just having a bad day? And then you're like, oh, there it is. And I mean, obviously, I'm passionate about all of this kind of stuff, but as a mum, I think the fact that so many things get swept under the carpet, because it's like, I'm just tired all the time, or that you just kind of go, well, my body's never going to be the same. It shouldn't. It's like, well, you shouldn't. That shouldn't happen, And actually one of my really good friends is a woman's physiotherapist, and she's the same. She's like, the things that people put up with down there, the prolapses, the tears, that people just are like, oh, I've had a baby. It's like, hang on a minute, you shouldn't have to.
Absolutely, everyone should see a pelvic floor physio. Like, I'm just so passionate about yes, absolutely.
And it's, and all the stuff that it's but I think it's a great thing for us to kind of keep that conversation going around and talk about it a bit more. So, I mean, Sarah and I could just talk about this all night, but we know people have got to go to bed. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you for everyone for joining us tonight. I'm going to be doing these Facebook Lives monthly on a different topic. Now, if you want to know any more about Sarah, or I'm going to share the link right now. Actually, I'll do it right now if I can find it. If you want to know any more about Sarah, then check this link out. If I can copy and paste as I'm. Oh, can I do two things at the same time? No, clearly I can't. Find Sarah here. There we go. I've even spelled your name right without an H.
Oh, thank you. I don't put it Sarah. It's fine.
I'm dyslexic, so my spelling's not that great, but today I've done it right. If you want to know any more about Sarah, any more about Mission Nutrition, and we can help you. If you've got questions, let us know about any of these topics, health and well-being. We have a team that can help you with the specifics. And as Sarah has demonstrated, she knows her stuff. So yeah, if you need Sarah's help, then certainly let us know. The other thing I was just going to say, actually, that a lot of people don't realise is that if you've got health insurance, a lot of health insurance policies cover a registered dietitian or a registered nutritionist. Some of them cover one, some of them cover both. So just to let you know, when you're registered, you've done at least a 3-year degree. So Sarah has trained for 5 years. I, in the UK, did a condensed course that was kind of full-time for 4 years, but we are qualified and registered, and you have to comply by the rules, which is why people will cover us over insurance. So if you've got a health insurance and you're looking for help, then just check your policy, because you probably, you know, a lot of policies these days do cover dietitians and nutritionists. So have a look at that. The last thing was just to let you know that the next Facebook Live is going to be about gut health, and we're going to be looking at, it's kind of along the same themes, what is normal, what is not normal in the gut department. So that'll be an interesting conversation. Awesome. From periods to poos. There we go. We're going to be talking about what are the best things to optimize your gut health, how your gut health can impact your weight, immunity, and your mood, irritable bowel and how to manage it. And we're going to be talking about probiotics. So I am now going to, by the magic of I'm also just going to share this in the comments so that you've got it. There you go. That's the link to the event for Sarah. So we'll go through the comments and we'll pick a winner for this.
Yay.
For the healthy food guide, cookbooks, and yeah. Any final words, Sarah? Any words of?
Thank you for having me. I affectionately say that my job is to talk about period and pill all day, but I genuinely just love it, and I think it's so cool that look at all these people who are joining us on their Thursday evening to learn about their bodies. I think that's pretty awesome.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sarah, and to everyone for tuning in. Thank you very much. This recording will stay live on my page. So if there's somebody that you know that has missed it, then just tag them in it, and they will be able to watch this back. I'll pin it to the top of my page, and I'll probably download it and put it on my website as well. So it's going to be around for a long time. Anyone that wants to know about hormones and periods can tune in anytime they want. If Netflix is boring, Sarah and I will be here for you. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Have a wonderful evening. I hope you sleep well. And yeah, I'll join you for another Facebook Live next month. See ya.
Bye.